You enter the temple, and a guard tells you it'll be 18 gold pieces to pass. You pay the toll and enter into the cathedral. It's a dark room, dimly lit, and along one wall, you see it burst into a bright white light as the Dungeons and Dragons movie starts. Welcome to Strikes Our Fancy, the show where we talk about just that, whatever strikes our fancy on a given day. I'm one of your hosts, Rob the Rakshasa, and with me, as always, I have...
Lich in training, Caleb.
I am woefully underprepared, Craig.
I feel like you're woeful a lot of times.
Yeah, it's just kind of my state of being, I think.
Yeah.
You were offered to come with us.
I was too busy editing the last episode to come with. Otherwise, I absolutely would have.
All those responsibilities.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the recently released, as of the time we're recording this, but probably not so much when it goes live.
A week. It's going to go out in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The somewhat recently released Dungeons and Dragons movie, Honor Among Thieves.
If you hadn't gleaned from the backstory, so these two guys went and saw it, and I was going to try and get to it before we did a review episode, but didn't get around to it. Didn't have time. So
life.
I will have to lean on you guys to tell me whether or not this movie's worth my time, or our listeners' time.
I will tell you, it is coming up throughout this podcast. I'll let you know.
It definitely is a movie I've seen.
It was an enjoyable ride. I think we've entered an era of storytelling, or of cinema at least, that is, if not, well, definitely not super substantial, but a good ride, a good fun hour and 40 minutes or however long it was.
It was about hour 40, hour 50, yeah. But like, I'm just happy it wasn't over 2 hours. Like, yeah. I'm tired of...
It was a good amount of movie?
It was a good amount of movie. Like, I'm tired of movies being like 2 hours 30, 3 hours.
And it still felt like an epic story.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It felt like they played this campaign and they're like, let's film it. Although, quick question, Rob. Was Chris Pine a bard? He had a lute, but I don't think he was a bard. That was
bothering me the whole time. It kind of comes off as he's just a guy that's... that he has no character sheet, which is kind of near and dear to Craig's heart.
Just a normalson.
Yep. But did he do heroic and or magical things? Like he did spec into something?
No,
not really.
Okay. No. Anytime a fight broke out, he would occasionally bash someone over the head with a sword that he picked up. Or he'd hit someone with his lute or mandolin, but that was it. There is a question in my mind about if he was giving out bardic inspiration, because there were a couple of times throughout the movie where someone was feeling down or like just they weren't in the campaign anymore, and he would come along and sing a song or give them a speech.
Oh yeah,
and suddenly, okay, I guess we can go. But other than that, he didn't really do anything. There was no vicious mockery.
That's what I was waiting for.
Yeah,
I was hoping for some of that.
There were no songs of glory. He's just a guy.
Huh.
And like, all the other characters are clearly defined. Michelle Rodriguez is a barbarian. Justice Smith is a sorcerer. The chick from It, I forget her name, is a druid. And there's an actual paladin. But like, they never really definitively state what Chris Pine's character is.
I think that was deliberate, like...
Oh, and then the thief rogue.
Yeah.
Is that deliberate in, like, typical video game trope, like, leave the main character a blank slate so you can insert yourself? Or is it more like, this is a player in the universe and, like, they can do anything they want because the power of imagination?
I think it's just kind of hard to do a bard without it coming across cheesy in film.
Yeah. I just always assumed that like bards had magic. Like,
well, I mean, yeah, they kind of do, but
like a tangible like a spellcaster,
right?
Like a tangible magic, even though it's not maybe explicitly talked about, but that like your bard has some deity or otherworldly source of.
And again, it's possible he was casting some cantrips or low level spells throughout the movie.
Yeah,
but at such a low level that it could have just been things that happened.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And maybe it is supposed to be open to interpretation. Like,
Maybe.
which I don't agree with. But I had read somewhere that he fits the character, whatever, of like a paladin oathbreaker, because he did break his oath to that particular group he was in. And as I suppose, dear listener, there is going to be spoilers. So,
Oh, yeah.
Listen warily.
I don't feel like that at all, because a paladin is in shining armor. He's got a big weapon. Chris Pine's a guy with a lute.
But he was like that, though. Like, wasn't he? Like, in the group,
Not really.
he was kind of a fighter.
I don't think so. I think at the beginning, even in the beginning, if anything, he was more like a rogue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel like the trailers portray him.
Yeah.
Like that he's going to be your sneaky thief, because it's set up, at least it very much looks like a heist movie.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is.
So I just assumed he was a rogue based on the promotional materials.
Mhm. Which would make more sense, actually, that he'd be a rogue and not have any magic.
He just multi-classed.
And also, like, we can have a loot.
He does get in a sneak attack.
When
When they're taken out to be executed after visiting Forge.
Yeah.
And the barbarian does all the fighting.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just one guy left, and he comes behind him with something he picked up and smashes him on the back of the head.
I'm sure there's some more studious podcasters out there than us that have broken down the movie and made character sheets based on the abilities you see people do
The
in the
movie company released character sheets.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
Well, what?
Okay, so what's Chris Pine?
Yeah,
why are we theory crafting, Caleb?
Right. Pause the recording.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Just let me chime in here. There's a definitive answer to your question. I'm not going to tell you.
I just want to have fun with my friends in theory craft.
Okay, fair enough.
Should we go through like a...
Boo doo 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 ba doo. Whoa, what was that? Bum bum ba da ba da. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Are you full of shit or are you a whiz? It's time to find out in Craig's Quiz. Welcome to Craig's Quiz, a podcast within a podcast. By the way, I'm totally ripping off this bit from My Brother and Me. However,
is there any bit that hasn't been ripped
off?
off?
I'm sure. But in today's Craig's Quiz, I realized that having not seen the movie, but you guys have, I am giving up my guise of an omnipotent being in our podcast world that I don't know everything. And so I'm going to be reliant on you guys today to really tell me about this movie and give me your expert opinions. But it occurred to me that if I'm going to be relying on you guys, I should really test your knowledge before I just take everything you say at face value.
Okay.
All right.
So on today's Craig's Quiz, it's Dungeon or Dragon. I will be giving each of you two names, and you have to tell me which is the dungeon and which is the dragon.
I can use my phone, right?
No.
Okay.
No. No calling a friend. No landline.
Okay.
No lifelines. All right. You guys ready?
Let's go.
Do it.
Dungeon or dragon. First up is Izmir and Profion.
Izmir is a dungeon.
Can
Caleb?
I agree with them?
Yeah. You
okay.
can agree or disagree, but I want an answer from each of you. So
Izmir does sound like a place.
Profion.
Profion does sound like a dragon.
Okay. Well, Izmir is technically a place, but it isn't essentially, it's not a dungeon. It is the empire in Mystania that is the setting of the first 2000 Dungeons & Dragons movie.
Craig, if you're going to ask us, is it a
Exactly.
dungeon or a dragon, and it's not a dungeon or a dragon, your quiz is already flawed.
Fuck this
It could
quiz.
be. It could be. Profion is the evil wizard played by Jeremy Irons.
Ooh.
So I'll give that point to you guys. I'll give you that for a dungeon.
Okay.
It is the setting.
Okay, but the rest of the questions, the answer better be dungeon or dragon.
All right. Next up, we have Sargasso and Faluzur.
Faluzor is a dragon.
Do you guys know this from something? Like you guys?
It just feels like a dragon.
That's a dragon name. That's
All
100. Not to be racist against dragons. That's a dragon name.
Well, Feluzur is the dragon god that is the titular dragon god from Dungeons and Dragons, Wrath of the Dragon God, the straight to sci-fi original series channel sequel to the Dungeons and Dragons movie in 2005.
Oh my god. No wonder we hadn't heard of that.
Exactly.
Sargasso is the mountain in which Feluzur is slumbering.
Was not a dungeon.
It's a dungeon. It's the caves in which...
Yeah, are the Mines of Moria a dungeon?
Yeah, Sargasso. All right. Next up, we have Karkoth and Nagurul.
Karkoth is a dungeon. Nagurul. Oh, I can't even say that. It is a dragon.
I was going to agree. Yep.
All right. Well, not to get a bunch of flack from Rob, but this was another trick question. Neither are a dungeon or a dragon.
Okay.
Because it goes to show your knowledge. Because if you've been paying attention to the theme, these names are from the third Dungeons and Dragons, the straight-to-DVD release Book of Vile Darkness in 2012.
Nobody's even heard of that.
Nargul is the evil wizard that literally transforms into the Book of Vile Darkness.
Oh, God.
And Karkoth is the kingdom beset by evil because this book is in its lands. So again, a setting, not necessarily a dungeon.
Okay,
Why did you give us specific rules?
The sewers of Karkoth are a dungeon.
Exactly.
That doesn't count.
I'm waiting for the answer where it's both a dungeon and a dragon.
That's what I was gonna bring it up.
Lord Jabu situation.
Last one. I think we're at 1 point.
Yeah.
One point for getting it right.
I think I have all of right on a technicality.
All right. Here's the real kicker. Final question: dungeon or dragon? And the names are Thembercloud and Grakstug.
They're both dragons.
Thembercloud definitely sounds like an elf.
They're both dragons.
All right. Caleb says they're both dragons, and you say
Thembercloud's an elf.
Thembercloud. Themberchowd.
Themberchow.
Chowd. It's a CH. Sorry.
Okay.
Themberchowd. Themberchowd and Grakstug.
Those are toughies. I
Wait,
don't know.
no. Themberchowd's a dragon. Grakstug is a place. It's in the Underdark.
Caleb coming in clutch at the end. This is the dragon and the dungeon from the 2023 movie Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Thembercloud is the fat red dragon, and Grakstug is the Underdark city, port city. Congratulations. I think, Caleb, you win.
I didn't know that from the movie. I knew that from the module Out of the Abyss because I've read that back to front like twice. So,
but here's the thing.
I should have. I looked up that name, Themberchow, just today when we were talking about doing this, and I just completely forgot it.
That's, again, had to test your credibility. So, gotta say, Rob, Caleb's gonna have a little more sway in this conversation now.
Let him.
But this concludes today's Craig's Quiz.
Where's our outro?
You don't get one.
Okay.
Just seamlessly right back into the.
You should.
How much XP do I get for that quiz?
Oh yeah.
None, because you failed.
Oh, okay.
Milestones.
On that note, there were some inconsistencies with the movie, some things that made it completely unrealistic for me.
Oh,
and
in the world of magic and dragons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And one of them was that at no point in that movie did anybody ask how much XP they were getting. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, so that's I kind of hinted at it before that Chris Pine might have been like your player stand-in because you can kind of do a bunch of different stuff. Was there any element like what they've done in the previous movies where, oh, yes, these are characters being played by someone? Or was this movie completely in Faerun?
It was in Faerun.
Yeah, it was completely in Faerun.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no
like, it's a game overlay.
Well, it was taking the approach that like this is a real place and these are real stories that are happening here.
Gotcha.
And I mean, maybe there was a little bit of a nod to kind of the gamey aspect of it.
Well, I had read somewhere, and I told you this in the theater, I think, that like somebody had counted the seconds of battle, and it was like 6 seconds per turn.
Huh.
And I'm not swift enough to make those counts when it's happening on screen, but I thought it was interesting. And if somebody took the time to count it, it's
interesting
probably true.
if true.
Yeah.
even if the 6-second rule isn't strictly applied, it is kind of turn-based combat where, which I didn't pick up on that right away because that's kind of common in kind of an ensemble. We'll call it a superhero movie. Everybody comes in and they do their flashy move, and then the next guy comes in and does his flashy move.
And you get focus on each character
right
as the fight progresses.
And it was mostly that last battle, I think, where you could probably pick out his turn. Yeah.
There were some other. I mean, there's tons of callbacks to things in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, though. I think my favorite is when they're in the High Sun games. They're in a maze. They come across the party from the 80s D&D cartoon.
Is that really true?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were the ones that were in the cage when they come by, and then they say, "No, that's not the way out."
Yeah.
What would you guys say was the split between combat and roleplay for this movie?
Pretty even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say
they had they didn't get the 6 encounters per game day, so fail on that, GM.
That's a hard and fast rule. I've never heard that before.
It's not a hard and fast rule. It's a recommended amount of encounters per adventuring day.
Interesting.
Huh. Interesting.
Somewhere in the DM's guide, I think, and it's not 6 combat encounters.
Sure,
it's
just 6
a lot of
things.
people. A lot of people can take it that way, but no, it's like 6 things that happen. 6. You see a traveler. You see
it's a
trap in the road.
Rough guide to pacing.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Was it cool for you to actually see an owlbear in a movie for once?
That was rad. There's been a lot of backlash on that, though.
Really?
Yeah, druids can't transform into owlbears because they're not creatures, or they're not beasts. They're aberrations, or there's some other classification of monster.
They're not natural.
Yeah.
Well, I remember they took a lot of liberties with the druid, because I remember you leaning over to me at one point and being like, she can only transform once per day.
Yeah.
And she was transforming
they were
into
not
animals.
following those rules, because she transformed directly from like a horse into the owlbear, and then into a bird, I think.
Yeah, no.
And then, she was a fly, then a rat, then a cat, then a mouse, then a deer.
Yeah.
You don't know how many short rests they're taking between scenes?
Okay, there was a chase scene where she was transforming into different creatures.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was fun. And I mean, honestly, that's a rule that only exists for the gamification of it. Sure. So it was fun to see, okay, how would a druid really work in this world? And they probably would be able to, as long as they had the energy to do it.
One thing I had a question for you about the sorcerer. I forget his name already. Every time he casts a spell, he has this thing on his belt that he kind of twists and turns. What is that supposed to be? He
mentioned that he's doing wild magic. So I'm not familiar with this. I've never played a sorcerer. So I don't know exactly how that's supposed to work.
Probably his focus.
It could be. Yeah.
I would assume.
As
someone who plays exclusively spellcasters.
So that could be. But I think the spinning aspect is supposed to be a nod to when you cast a spell as a wild magic sorcerer, you roll a die, and that does something.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to come out.
So yeah, that's him rolling for his wild magic surge.
Okay. Which we didn't see any of that. I thought that would have been cool.
No,
to
we
see.
did.
Did we?
Yeah, when
the gravity reverses. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay.
And then there was another time. There were a couple of times where he did something that was unexpected, and that was the wild magic surge, because it's not always something crazy and ridiculous.
Yeah. There's this is turning into a conversation with me and Rob at this point.
That's right. I'm here for it.
There's the act of attuning to a magical object. You know, in the books, to me, it's always kind of like, oh yeah, just spend like 6 hours sitting down attuning to the object. In the movie, they made it a bit more of a dramatic stakes type of deal, and I like that. Like, he puts on the helmet, and he has to like find the confidence.
Yeah. So there's never been a definitive answer to what it means to attune to a magic item. So I've always thought that, you know, most magic items have some sort of personality to them. So I've always kind of thought like the attuning process for each one is different. And this helmet wants to make sure that he's worthy of holding it and wearing it. So of course it's going to test him in that way. now I'll never be able to get the image out of my mind that if you're not attuned to a magic item and you put it on, you go flying across the room.
Well, I think that act, and plus like the act of like having to overcome something in your mind to attune to it, you could role play the attunement now.
Yeah,
I never thought of that before. I think that's really cool.
That is really awesome.
Or like it could be frustrating for your players, but like they may have to make a check every time they want to use it, like make a will saving throw or whatever.
Yeah,
yeah. In the movie, it comes as like he puts the helmet on and time literally stops, and he's speaking to an ancestor who's like asking him questions and kind of testing him, and he doesn't have the confidence to overcome this, and then it blows him out of the helmet.
Gotcha.
So it is more of a storytelling device for the movie, but it could be one for a story as well, and I think that's interesting.
Sure. Yeah, because in the game, it never tells you what attuning is. Just you have to spend 6 hours or 12 hours, and I can't remember. Does it depend on the type of magic item?
I don't know if the type. I think it's just per item is different.
Sure, yeah.
Like I've seen some that are full days.
Okay.
So yeah, why not make up your own fucking rules where you role play some shit and sometimes the players can fail. I think that's where you might have some struggles. Is your players might get frustrated if they can fail using like their uber weapon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like a lot of things in Dungeons and Dragons, that comes down to the DM making failure interesting.
Sure.
Which I think you could do something where, oh yeah, you fail to put on your ring of fireball, but you cast a fireball.
But that was one of the more interesting aspects that I think they took from the game and actually elevated.
Right, yeah, because they could have easily just said, okay, attune to this, and then flip to the next scene where he's been staring at it for 6 hours.
Which I literally thought was going to happen.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, So this movie does a lot of cool narrative things, I think. That's the big one I can think of.
Nice. So take a step back from all the D&D specific things.
No.
Was it a good movie on its own? Like, did it have a good, enjoyable story, meaningful plot?
Yeah, I think if you're the type of person who likes a fantasy adventure, which we really haven't had any in years.
Yeah. No.
Not as a movie.
Yeah.
They've, for some reason, fantasy since Game of Thrones has just been all like straight to TV stuff.
Right. But just as a fantasy movie, I think it is a good return to form.
Okay.
I think for me, Chris Pine's character, Ed. Yeah, Ed. And his partner in crime, the barbarian, Holga. Ed's character has a wife at the beginning and a child, and they end up getting killed by the Red Wizards of Thay.
Classic tragic backstory.
And then he meets Holga, and they just become friends, and they become this cute little family unit. And then they get pinched in a heist, and they get thrown in a dungeon for 2 years. Which, the opening scene is pretty funny when they're waiting for the judge to come, and it's an Aarakocra. And they're like, we need to wait for him before we start doing anything. And he finally shows up, and they use him to just throw themselves out the window and fly away. But regardless, they escape, and he finally gets his daughter back. But his daughter is not the biggest fan of him, or Holga, for having left her.
Sure.
Anyways, the whole movie is about them trying to earn her trust back and stuff like that, and they finally do. But Holga ends up getting shot by a Red Wizard's arrow, or stabbed by a Red Wizard's sword.
Yeah.
Which apparently is a big deal. Like, I don't know the lore behind the Red Wizard's sword, but apparently you can't just heal it randomly.
There are, I don't know specifically about Red Wizards, but there are definitely so-called permanent deaths in Dungeons and Dragons that you can't just use a resurrection spell. And that was another interesting thing. Like, they mentioned that, like, you can't use a resurrection spell. And they say it just like that. And they talk about Mordenkainen's arcane seal.
Yeah.
Like, they name drop a couple of spells.
Cool. I mean, yeah, these big items and spells and things in the lore of the games, it would make sense that your NPCs in the universe would know about these giant earth-shattering things too.
Right, yeah.
Like, it could be commonly dropped like that.
They even make a joke about that, where the sorcerer, he's kind of a wimpy, like, failed sorcerer. And after they break out of the dungeon, they're trying to find him, and they find him doing magic tricks, and he's just casting prestidigitation over and over again, and the crowd is not impressed at all.
Which I think if Mike sees this before, shout out to Mike, they reference a character from the new Critical Role campaign, Fresh Cut Grass.
Oh, yeah?
He just waves his hand, and he's like, magic. Did you smell that? It's fresh cut grass.
Which, I didn't catch that.
I had to read that was a deliberate shout out to.
Sure. I just thought that's prestidigitation. I'm pretty sure that's written in the spell text for Presto that you could make the smell of fresh cut grass.
But as they get to the final battle, and again, me going back for a moment, the whole thing is them trying to find a resurrection spell thing.
Yeah, resurrection tablet.
It's because he wants to bring his dead wife back.
Okay.
And as you get closer to the movie, he even calls himself out like, I wasn't trying to bring your mother back. I was trying to bring my wife back. And I thought that was a unique thing to call out. Like, he's not trying to help his daughter. He's trying to help himself under the guise of helping his daughter. And he suffered for that selfishness. But Hulk ends up getting stabbed, and the daughter is like crying over the dead barbarian because that was basically her mother throughout her life. And he takes out the resurrection tablet, and she looks at him, and she's just like, use it. And he's like, we can only use it once, and it'll never happen again. And she's like, I know. So they bring back the best friend and not the wife. And I thought that was a cool little, not every story has to end in some romantic climax. This is a friendship climax. This is the family coming back together, but the family doesn't necessarily need to be romantic. And I thought that was really cool. And I like that aspect.
The rare friendship climax that tends to get teased over a lot longer period of time, but it's oh so worth it.
You just ruined it.
That I like that it's a twist on the classic narrative and the classic tropes, and it leaves something unexpected at the end, which is nice. You know, you don't want it to be too formulaic,
right?
Well, that's the thing. I kind of expected one of them to die, and he had to make the choice.
Yeah,
I just didn't know who it was going to be. I thought it was going to be the daughter, actually. But again, that's the expected route for that. The daughter would die, and he has to use it to bring back the daughter. I thought it would have been. So the fact that they used Holga was a surprise to me. And I did cry. Our
real family is the one we made along the way.
That's kind of how the movie feels a little bit. Yeah. But that's fine.
They literally do say, what is it? They tell the druid, don't you need to go back to your people? And she says, I am with my people.
Yeah. And I'm like, you've known them for a day.
Yeah.
That's her character doesn't get fleshed out very much. And that's probably to a detriment to her.
Yeah.
She does a lot of cool things, but she even her performance is even kind of dry. And I wonder if that's just the character, but I didn't care for her performance in this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because like she didn't show very much emotion.
Right. But yeah, I thought that was just the character though. She was pretty standoffish throughout the whole thing.
Which understandably, I'm like, the humans have killed her forest and we're just killing her people. But
no big deal.
No big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's par for the course for a tiefling.
Was she a tiefling?
Yeah.
Well, those were the horns on her head.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the horny tail. Ones are always tieflings, Caleb.
Even Simon, that was his name, the sorcerer. Simon, even he mentioned he was half human, and I was kind of curious on what he was. Or is that just all sorcerers that they're
No.
That is a bit of a trope of a background for sorcerers, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, a half-elf sorcerer, it's a good build.
Yeah.
Well, or a lot of the narrative that you can give your character as a sorcerer is you're imbued with magic because of your lineage.
Yeah.
So you're half something else or quarter something else.
But I think they go back and say he's imbued with magic because of relationship to Elminster.
Yeah.
Who I'm pretty sure was a human. So the half-elf didn't really mean anything. But he just picked that for the stats.
It was a throwaway thing.
I did something that I've never done before, specifically for this cast. Because I didn't have time to watch the movie, but I had some time. Yeah, I'm sorry. But I had some time while I was working today. I listened to the soundtrack without having seen the movie first, which I've never done before. I've never done that for any other movie. So I wanted to ask you guys before I give my thoughts on the soundtrack. What did you guys think of the soundtrack?
I only watched it once, and I didn't focus on it.
Sure.
It meshed well.
No, I'm with Rob. There was nothing to me that really stood out musically.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it would change if I watch it again. I will watch it again. Maybe it'll change.
Unfortunately, when it comes to film scoring, it's best when you don't notice it.
Sure. And I mean, not to shoehorn the conversations specifically to something that I could contribute to, but I felt the exact same way when I was listening to it and solely focusing on it. I was like, this is music that I would put on in the back of a campaign I'm running. Like, it's a lot of sweeping, orchestral, very epic feeling. So I didn't necessarily pick up on any songs where I was like, oh, this is like the keynote, quintessential Honor Among Thieves song. Like, there didn't seem to be that.
Yeah.
However, I don't know if it was just the playlist I was listening to on Spotify, but there were a couple songs in the playlist that I have written down in my notes as I was listening to it. This is an 80s drug money collection montage. Like, that was the sounds that I was hearing, the music I was hearing. I was like, that is what I'm picturing in my head right now.
Yeah, there were a couple of kind of montage-y moments.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
But like, were they heavy on like synth?
They were
Not
collecting
that I
drugs.
noticed.
But they were collecting drugs?
No,
okay.
no.
It's like, it'd be funny if the music actually conveyed that really accurately. But no, like I said, there were a couple songs in the playlist. They said they were part of the movie, and I was like, I do not see how this fits.
I think it would be funny if you were listening to like the old Dungeons and Dragons movie soundtrack.
Maybe. From what I could tell, it fit very much the fantasy theme, and I plan on pulling some of the music next time I do certain environments in the campaign.
Yeah.
Well, like, I think when it comes to, I agree with Rob a little bit here about like, you know, film soundtrack should kind of be in the background, but I do look at like big epic sci-fi films like Dune.
Wow.
Yeah. Or even, what is, it has that woman screaming in Dune. You know, it sounds like some sort of Middle Eastern type.
Like the Mongolian death chant thing?
Yeah. No. It's a woman. You know what? Fuck it. Whatever.
Are you talking about The Fifth Element?
Where she sings a space opera and goes,
Am I getting my Space Odysseys mixed up?
Is it a large blue woman that you're envisioning?
Maybe.
Okay, that's Fifth Element.
That's not Dune at all. Okay. Regardless, you know, there's tracks that stand out for these large, big budget movies. I'm not saying D&D was a big budget movie, but
I think it was.
yeah, but
151 million.
oh, that's a big budget. Okay. But yeah, there's like things I can pick out of like the Dune soundtrack, and like I know it doesn't get as a lot of play, but like even the Avengers soundtrack, I could pick that out. You know, I mean, so is there something to be said about a signature track for the movie that we can't even remember? You know, I don't know.
I do think like something might be a little missed if you don't have that one. Like when you hear that anthem or you hear that track, you're like, oh shit, that's X. If you hear the opening, 4 bars of Harry Potter, you know exactly what you're listening to. It's not that all of a soundtrack has to do that, but typically I feel like, you haven't quite hit the mark if you don't have at least one.
So I'm thinking back to like 90s Disney movies. They'd have these orchestral moments, but they didn't like signify a specific movie. And then they would go on to like live life in the trailers for other movies, and it would kind of become like the Disney theme.
Interesting.
There's a couple. There's one that is from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. There's another one that I think was from Beauty and the Beast. I don't remember for sure what movie it's from, but there are these songs that I remember seeing on the trailers for Disney movies, and you didn't think about it because it's just, oh yeah, there's the Disney song.
Sure.
And then you watch the movie and you're like, hey, that's actually in this movie and it's not in any other movie. So I almost wonder if that's something they're doing where they can like reuse these songs again. Because you can never reuse the Avengers theme. You can never reuse the Harry Potter theme, except that you keep making new movies. But like it's only those properties that could ever like be part of it.
Yeah.
How are you going to use another piece of music again except for more installments of the same thing?
for trailers for other movies, Craig. I just told you.
Okay.
You look perplexed.
I am perplexed. I don't know. I just don't know that I get it, which is fine.
I don't know. I don't know that every movie needs to have a theme song.
No. And it's not, I'm not even saying like a specifically theme song, but like something that you'd hear it and be like, that's X. Like I said, it's not even the whole song. Like I really think of Harry Potter, just the beginning like notes. For
our next Craig's quiz, we're going to quiz you on Robert Zimmerman tracks and see if you can pick out what movie they're from.
First off, it's Hans Zimmer.
I was just going to say Robert Zimmerman.
Yeah, I don't know who you're talking about.
I don't know who I'm talking about.
But no, I won't be able to pull those apart. You're right. Yeah. Those are inscrutable and indistinguishable. Also, that wouldn't be a Craig's quiz.
It's a quiz for Craig.
No.
It's a Rob test.
It's Craig's quiz, the quiz we're giving Craig.
Just to combat your opinion for a moment here, just a little bit.
Yeah,
I'll go first. I rolled higher. I think not every movie, you are correct, not every movie needs that signature soundtrack or that signature track for the movie. However, for something that's kind of iconic, I could, again, just to name more, the Man of Steel soundtrack has a really awesome soundtrack, and they have that one track for Superman. Mm-hmm. I think D&D probably should have had that as well, because it is an iconic big budget thing that a lot of people know. So I'm not expecting some random rom-com to have a signature track that everybody should remember, but something like this I expected more
like
from.
When the movie starts, before even like the pre-title screen, you see the D and ampersand D, and you hear this.
Come to think of it, that would have. I'll give it to you. That would have been great for the next movie in the line. They could start off just by playing that song, and you know what's coming when you're in the theater.
Like I said, not necessary, not required. Feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Maybe it was a conscious choice to stop people from like using that at every D&D table for the rest of eternity.
Because God knows you would have done it.
I would not have.
You would not have?
No.
You got to be different.
I actually probably would have, but not intentionally. I would have just put on Melodice and it would come up.
Yeah.
You would have made the ironic choice.
No. Just it would have come up like in a playlist that I had.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys think that this is gonna like? So I don't actually know this, but supposedly Stranger Things like launched a new wave into our tabletop RPGs, and like people are like, "Oh, Dungeons and Dragons, that's cool. I want to learn how to play that." Mm-hmm. But I mean, that was very different in that we saw people on the screen playing the game, and their narrative kind of meshed in with their reality narrative of that show. Versus something like this is just the fantasy story. Do you guys think it'll have kind of that same effect on the zeitgeist that people will be like, oh, I want to learn more about this. I want to be part of this.
I don't feel like it will.
I think it would. And I think Hasbro definitely wants it to. But I think anybody who is going to be swayed into Dungeons and Dragons that wasn't already into it got there through Stranger Things already.
Yeah.
I don't think the audience of people who would be interested, but haven't heard of it or haven't played, I don't think that exists right now at this time.
Well, I agree. And I think Stranger Things hit the mark with it better because they're showing people playing it and how it would be played. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is just a story set in that world.
I will give them there were a lot of kids in the late 80s, early 90s who were swayed into playing Dungeons and Dragons through the Dungeons and Dragons branded books. Mm. Because they read this fantastic world and said, hey, I want to be part of that.
Well, also the devil was like enticing them, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's very, very persuasive. Yeah, Dragonlance was the shit.
Mm-hmm. I still want to play that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I've never played. I've just read a ton of the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think the Dungeons and Dragons movies, like Rob said, is only going to entice people who love Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably going to get enough to get a sequel, but like, I don't think you're not watching people play, so it's not going to entice others to play. So that's
not what I said at all.
Okay. Well, I'm saying it then. I'm saying it.
Yeah, because I wonder if it might almost have the opposite effect. Kind of like, I don't want to throw too much shade on Critical Role, but because I think they do an amazing narrative stuff, and it's such a cool concept in a project. But it has apparently created a little bit of anxiety around playing the game, in that they see voice actors, professionals at this, playing a game, and they think, well, I have to be able to do that, or I really probably shouldn't play.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing potentially with this movie. Like, well, I have to create a narrative this fleshed out and this elaborate, or I just shouldn't play.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not the case.
Hopefully not. Hopefully the community will take on what happened in the movie, where the players are actually pushing the story forward.
Yeah.
Because it's very much, Chris Pine, I want to go get this tablet. Then it's, we want to get out of the dungeon. Then I want to find my daughter. And like, the only time the DM has to nudge them along is when they're looking for the Helm of Destruction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there a Dungeon Master analog?
Yeah, there was a DMPC in there for sure.
Yeah.
Not a Dungeon Master analog, but there was a guy who comes in who they're on a quest to find a magic item, and we don't know, we're at a dead end. We don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So they go talk to this character and he's like, I'll take you to where it is, but after that, you're on your own. Oh, the world's going to end? I'm sure you could take care of it.
I agree with all that, but I will say they had to get there through a lot of monotonous tasks. They had to talk to the dead multiple times, and it was a funny sequence. But that's how they got the guy's name.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just a random, like everybody knew who he was, but they just didn't know he knew where the helmet was.
Right.
So I think you could kind of say that they earned the right to get to him.
No, for sure, for sure. But that it strikes me as,
this is the NPC with the answers, because you guys obviously don't know where to go.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
And that he like joins the party for a little while and then just pieces out right before the final battle.
Gotcha.
Like that is absolutely a DM move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is a point where he does kind of save the party from a total party kill.
Oh.
So like it's very, very much a DM PC,
Nice.
in my opinion.
Was that when he's fighting those dead soldiers from Faye in the dungeon? Yeah. Again, I don't think Chris Pine's character had a sword at all.
No.
He was just there with his loot.
Just a lot of improvised weapons.
A lot of improvised weapons.
Not even a lot. Just mostly he was just there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he does kind of put a lampshade on it and was like, oh, I'm the planner.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, you already made the plan, so why do I need you? He's like, if that plan fails, I create another plan. And she's like, well, you create plans that fail. He's just like, shit. One of the things that really made me giggle is when the DM's PC character was standing at the edge of the bridge explaining to them how to get across the bridge in the puzzle-like manner.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think that's like a call out to all DMs there trying to explain to their characters or their PCs, here's how to fucking do this.
Right, yeah.
Those and damn torches.
I don't want to hear it about the torches. I made that so goddamn clear. Yeah, there was a lot of exposition there about how to do it, and it was a ridiculously complex trap to get through. So yeah, that was a good call out to maybe make simpler traps.
Yeah. Nice.
There's the thing they use to get across the bridge.
The hither thither
stick. But that seemed like a very, what is it? Deus Ex Machina. The hither thither stick. That they just randomly happened to find at Holga's ex-husband's place.
I mean, yes, but it also was super, it was really in keeping with kind of D&D themes of, here's some treasure you got from a previous adventure. You didn't think it was worth that much.
Yeah, you're like, oh, great. Thanks, I guess.
And suddenly, in the next adventure, it's the key item.
Yeah. So that didn't come off as clunky to you?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No, I thought it was a great joke.
Mm.
Again, it was just in keeping with the theme.
Yeah. Overall, with the movie, how did you feel about character arcs? Were they well fleshed out? Did they complete well to you?
Chris Pine's character definitely was, obviously, he's kind of the main character, so he was the most fleshed out. And I think they did a fair job there. The other characters were kind of just where they were.
Yeah.
I mean, they grew a little bit, but they didn't really have the personal flaws to get over.
Yeah. Chris Pine was definitely more selfish at the beginning than at the end. Yeah. I heavily agree with that because, like, the druid character, she definitely stayed. Her plot is complete, but she just didn't change throughout the entire thing. Mm-hmm. She was just the same, except her people are safe now.
Right.
Simon gained more confidence over the course of this adventure, and that was the deliberate flaw pointed out. Mm-hmm. That's why she didn't like him. You don't have no confidence.
Right.
Holga didn't really have anything for me besides her love for the daughter. So,
I mean, there was a little bit of the tortured, I left my tribe for this man, and now we're not together. But she just kind of got over it.
Yeah, she did. And his bardic inspiration helped her overcome it a little bit. Because she got on the horse and he started singing to her.
Right,
yeah.
Yep.
That's the problem with ensembles, I think. Mm-hmm. Some characters are left behind.
Yeah.
But that's also accurate of any actual, like, tabletop campaign. You're going to have scenes or arcs that focus more on one character than the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, I
mean... And, if you play a tiefling character that, like, their defining trait is that they don't trust humans, no matter what happens, you're not going to stop role-playing that.
Yeah.
You're going to always kind of have that attitude. Mm. So that kind of works there.
Yeah.
The begrudging respect for that one human that saved you that one time.
Yeah. Like, the party, you guys are cool.
Yeah.
Everyone else, fuck off.
So, as the person who is most senior in D&D here, probably, I don't know about Craig. I always figured you were, like, into it before us. What was, like, the coolest thing to see on the screen for you that you were like, oh, wow, that's something I've always kind of wanted to see on the big screen, if anything.
Oh, man, good question. I don't know. There wasn't anything that I was, like, itching to see. I really don't have a good answer for that. I think a lot of things that I would have wanted to see in the movie have been explored by other fantasy movies before. So it was interesting to see, like, the explicit call out of magic items. You hear that a lot in other fantasy stories where there is an item that is magical, but it's never like this is the MacGuffin for, which they kind of dance around that like we're writing we're in a story about this thing.
You really need to watch the 2000 Jeremy Irons Dungeons and Dragons movie.
I watched it, but I don't remember it.
Almost makes love to that scepter. Like the magic MacGuffin of that movie, Jeremy Irons is all about it.
Yeah, see, but that kind of goes back to what I was getting at. Like, there wasn't really anything terribly new in this movie, and that sounds negative. I don't think every movie needs to break ground. So I don't know. There was just nothing I was really looking forward to. I was just looking forward to a good ride, a good adventure fantasy movie.
And did it succeed?
Yeah. 100% it did.
Yeah.
But how about you, Caleb? Was there a thing that you really wanted to see and you got it?
I was wanting to see the Underdark because that was my first DM'd campaign that I DM'd. And I got it a little bit. Yeah. I got a taste. But, like, the Underdark as a location is always kind of fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, do you have dark vision?
Well, what did you say during you leaned over and said to me when they entered the Underdark?
Yeah, they go into the Underdark and the DM character is talking to all of them about how, hey, it's really dark in here. If you don't have any light, or he asks who has light, and then if you don't have any light, I'll guide you through. And not one character said, I have dark vision.
Which I didn't laugh at until like a few scenes later when I was like, oh, I get it.
Yep. Oh.
Yeah, I've done that. But I would like to see more Underdark stuff. But also, there was a little things, kind of like, a tuning doesn't happen in many fantasy movies. And I thought that was interesting to see. And I didn't know that that's kind of what I wanted to see until I saw it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was cool to see like the animated intellective hours.
Yeah.
Never seen those guys move before.
And the joke that accompanies it when they just walk by everybody, and he's just like, "Oh, that's disappointing."
Yeah. Speaking of jokes, there were a few times in the movie where characters try something, it fails, and it fails in a humorous way, which is very like D&D. That is exactly what happens. You roll a 1, DM says, "Oh, ho, ho."
I know how this can go perfectly wrong for you.
Yeah. So there's our kind of review on D&D, but I had a fun time talking.
You got to be more specific than that, Caleb. We didn't talk about the D&D movie. We talked about D&D Honor Among Thieves.
Okay, we talked about
which one of the apparently 4?
Yeah, I was ready to gush over Jeremy Irons just drenched in eyeliner.
I like to imagine.
Oh my god!
Oh my god! I like to imagine that you watched that one first and you're like, yeah. All in all, it was good. Rob, any closing thoughts on D&D? Honor Among Thieves 2023?
Gosh, I hate when movies or popular franchises take a phrase and make that the title, because you'll never be able to search for anything Honor Among Thieves again without getting that.
Yeah. Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Ruined.
That's our discussion on Honor Among Thieves. I've been Rob. With me are my hosts,
the idiot Caleb.
Surprise, has been a mimic the whole time.
And this has been Strikes Our Fancy. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so at TikTok at Strikes Our Fancy, strikesourfancy@gmail.com, website ourfancy.site, or
if you go down to the description of this episode, you can click on the link. It'll take you to Anchor, and you can leave us a 1-minute voice message and share your thoughts, and you might get a shout out on the episode, just like Mike is about to be. Multi-time guest and avid listener Mike sent us a message in regards to our Hills to Die On episode, and so we thought we'd share his words with you now.
Hey, this is Mike. So, as for the dentist, yeah, I would say it's a big scam. I agree with Craig. You go in after so many years of not going to the dentist at all, and they're like, hey, you have potential issues coming up. We need to spend $2,000 to alleviate these potential issues that might come up in the future. That seems bad. That's a scam. As for Caleb's point about Marvel movies, so you look at like Vera Steinberg in Black Panther, and why would you say that she can't get an Oscar for Black Panther? I mean, she acts phenomenally. And you look at the other Oscar-worthy movies, and like 10% of the population thinks, oh yeah, that's a really great movie. And the other, 90% says, I don't really get it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It just seems very elitist, and it should go to Black Panther.
Fuck you, Mike.
Thank you for the comments and for not talking to somebody there, Mike. I'll take that as my hill truly was the most irrational, and he had no thoughts on it.
I interpret that as a resounding endorsement for anything I say for all time.
Can I just say that I don't agree with your guys' thoughts on the dentist?
No.
We have opposite thoughts. How can you not agree?
No, I mean his and Mike's. His and Mike's. They're there to help. That's all I'm going to say. We don't have to get into it. I don't agree with you either, Rob. Wash your fucking dishes before you put them in the dishwasher.
No. What does that have to do with the dentist?
But thank you so much, Mike, for sending in that message. And listener, we hope you do as well. We'd love to engage with you more. That's all we've got for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in a couple weeks.